I think it's recording. I wanted to make one more recording about this because in that video, I used all kinds of facial expressions that are forbidden. This is really important. I looked at the video while I was editing it and creating it so that it could be downloaded to my website. And I noticed that I was creating all kinds of facial expressions that are forbidden by the so-called homosexual agenda. I was using all kinds of human facial expressions that have been forbidden for decades by the TV turds and the queer propagandists and the filthy monkeys and the monkey judges and the monkey lawyers. Monkey judges, monkey lawyers, editors of queer news rags, editors of queer mag rags, anything that's part of the huge campaign of lies from the queer propagandists intended to replace humanity has outlawed human expression. Think about what I just said. Has outlawed human expression. Written, video, or facial. Human qualities, human attributes, human values, human expressions. Facial expressions. Forbidden. Oh, absolutely forbidden. And it dawned on me while I was reviewing that video that I was using all of these forbidden expressions on my face. And I said, I've just got to include the video. Because like I said in that video, this is really all about the audio. I want the audio track, not necessarily the video track. The video track, it's just history, it's part of the archives. But I'm going to release that one, and I'm going to release this one because of that reason. There are a couple of the reasons for showing this video. One is, I want you to take a good look at this beard here. This beard is going away. Yes, once a season I chop it down. It's like cutting a forest. Once a season I trim the beard. And I have good reasons to do so because when it gets this long, and it can get longer, it can get down to about here, you see. But once it gets this long, as I go around the country, I hear these reactions from people. People who have never seen me before somehow recognize me, but I've never seen them before. And I'm in all kinds of different places and situations. And almost as a universal comedy routine, as I'll pass somebody and they look at me and they see me with this beard, I'll just look at them like, okay, there's a person, and I keep on going. But before I'm out of hearing range, I will hear that person say something like, "Holy Moses, George, this is on sale." Or, "Holy Moses, Amanda, you don't need all of those." Or, "Holy Moses, Bill, we're going to miss the game." And it just keeps happening. Which tells me, you know, maybe I should trim down the beard. It's about that time, it's about that month. But I wanted to say something else too. I think I'll tag on to the back of this another video after I trim the beard. But I wanted to say something else, and that is, everyone is grumbling and complaining in their own way about the 1,000 page message, which is now probably going to be 1,400 pages. And the time it takes. the time it takes to put out a message like that. I'm including an audio podcast with this that I just made. You need to listen to that. It explains things that I cannot explain here in the video. But I'll repeat one thing, and that is, you have to take time off from what you're writing, if it's a big project, to keep it fresh and keep it alive, and to not become subterranean about it, not to become too involved in it to the point where you miss the overview, you start to become too detailed about it. You start to bog down in the whole thing. Your progress, your motion, your forward motion to get the whole thing done starts to slow down and drag down. You have to get away from it. It's the opposite of writer's cramp. I've never had the writer's cramp. I have the opposite. I have writing avalanches. I have writing earthquakes. I have writing storms. I have massive amounts of writing. To the point where it's actually hard to organize it all. I have come up with a technique, and I have organized it all, but believe me, it's way bigger than one message at 1,400 pages. And I've learned that when things get too involved, because the more you dig into something, the more other issues appear and present themselves, and you have to write them down and log them down and remember to write them too somehow. You can get really bogged down, even scattered. Your attention becomes diffused instead of staying on the mainstream of what you are doing. I've never had the writer's cramp, but I have these writing complications. Complications of writing. And I hope I'm using facial expressions that are forbidden in the hideous Boston horrid zone. How much I wish that was true. And it is. Oh, ick. Something else is happening, though. Locally. There's a Keystone Cops type of local imbecility happening because of a slaughterhouse coming in. And the first overt move by the hoggers to own Eagle Grove, which is this town, and control Wright County, which is this county, was just told to me by the locals. They just told me what happened. And it is the first overt move by the hoggers to take over this town and to take over this county. Which makes me want to start to write about them. And I could probably, and probably will, write about them. And I'd like to get some real close anal inspections of hoggers. And reveal that to the world. But before I can get to that, I'd have to explain all the petty politicians, the lunatic greedy county coyotes, and the absolutely bonkers slumlords, all of which are going over the edge, beyond the pale, and you just wouldn't believe it unless you were here and you saw it. In a place that was so peaceful. In a place that was so actually tranquil. But underneath the surface were all these greedy bastards and bitches that weren't satisfied because their paychecks are all dependent upon how many people live in the town and how many taxes they can claim and what they can wring out of the population. The bigger the population, the more you can wring money out of it. if you're a petty politician and a county coyote. And they've been unsatisfied all this time because there's been this peaceful, calm, static population. And they have not been able to get one of the biggest things that creatures of their kind must have. You will hear about this again. You will hear more about why it is this way. But creatures like county coyotes, petty politicians, slumlords, anything infested with the greed, and the greed is bubbling to the surface all over the place, here, like you would not believe. Of course, you did not live here before, so you will not see the difference. The difference will not present itself to you because you were not here before this all happened, this mania, this hysteria began. But there's one thing that all petty creatures like that absolutely must have. And they have not been able to have it up to this point, which is one of the reasons why they are jumping up and down and committing all kinds of ludicrous actions here in Eagle Grove and in the county, because these slogging, hey, a new word. Yeah, I'll use that one. Anyway, these hoggers, all kinds of new vocabulary is going to happen because of this. Hoggers are coming in with this slaughterhouse, which was already rejected up in Mason City. Mason City wanted nothing to do with it because they knew what's going to happen and how detrimental it will be. But the petty politicians here, knowing the layout of the subterranean greedy bastards and bitches that have all this time been wanting this one thing that they could not have, realized that it could happen here, and the gushing outflow of greed by all of these subterranean things that would come to the surface would overrule the objections of the population, which is a peaceful population anyway, and doesn't want problems, doesn't want troubles, and doesn't really realize just how sinister this is. And I suppose I'll have to get into it. This all delays the other message, so don't blame it all on me. It delays other messages because of its absurdity, which has to be reported somehow. The local news rags are 100% part of the twisted evil behind what's going on, so you will never read the truth in a local news rag around here. Somebody's got to report the truth. That takes time, which prevents the world from hearing the truth about other things that they need to know. All because of one thing. There are many reasons, but there's this one most important thing. And I hope you understand what I'm going to say. There is an urgent need by petty dictators and greedy bastards and bitches to have big swimming pools in their backyards with no turds in them. When you are a piece of shit, it is very important to have a big swimming pool in your backyard with no turds in them. That's very important if you're a tiny-brained, greedy slug that drives a Ford fuck-up, uses Hewlett-Packard computers, and watches queer Disney trash. TV watchers, oickers, petty politicians, petty monkeys of every description. I'm going to have to describe this, and you're not going to believe your eyes when you read it. SAD. S-A-D. In mile-high letters, SAD. So that's happening too. Plus, the more I write these messages, the more complicated they become, like I said, and side issues present themselves. And they've got to be logged down, registered, fleshed out, and preserved so they can be explained later. And the more involved you get into it, the more this happens. So you have to get away from it. Like I said, I've read 5 books. I've written other messages while I'm doing this, but I have read 5 books while I'm running this message. And you have to do that. Listen to the audio file. It explains it better than I'm doing right now. I've already written other messages while I'm writing this message. I'm still taking photographs. I've read 5 books, and I'm on a 6th book right now. Something totally unrelated that you'll hear about later. And it's all necessary. If you're a writer, you've got to learn that you've got to get away from something that's really big for a while and then go back to it. If you have the determination and the willpower to keep on writing one singular message and finishing it, completing it, and giving it to the world, and you will not be diverted, then you can read other books, you can do other things, and it's not going to be detrimental to the message that you're writing. It's actually going to be good for what you're doing, good for the writing. So I'm doing that as well. I'm trying to address the innocent and good people and their complaints about why this is taking a while. I heard something 2 weeks ago that is very good for all of us. Very good for all of us. Except the county coyotes, and except the hoggers, and except the petty, greedy bastards and bitches, and so on and so forth, that are clumped together by their greed in the queer coalition bladders with, guess what? The deviates. Which they immediately explain away in all kinds of chicken shit phraseology. Expectant terminology. Expecting you to believe it. You better believe their crap. You better believe their terms. You better believe their phrases. Oh yeah, they're going to own the county. You better watch out. Well, you can say I could go on, but I think I'll stop. I want to trim this beard. I think I'll leave that hanging there. Stimulate some thought. Cool thing about this is I can edit it all I want to, but I probably won't. It's just so much fun. So all of that is happening. I'm reading other books. I'm writing other messages. I'm taking photographs. I'm writing the main message, which you can only do and do all of the other things because you've got the determination to get it done to begin with. Otherwise, don't do that. And I really don't want to get into the situation here locally yet. The crazy things happening, and even the local townspeople are realizing now how absurd this is becoming. And this place has always had a flaw. This town used to be almost ideal. This town, before the curfew, was a town where you could walk around at 2 o'clock in the morning and there was no problems. People were doing it all the time. When I got here in 2003, one of the first things I noticed about this town is it went to sleep at 2 o'clock in the morning. And it wakes up at 10 o'clock in the morning. It still wakes up at 10 o'clock in the morning. People who are new to the town, new to this county, they just have no idea of what I'm talking about. They can't imagine it. They cannot imagine entire towns that do not wake up until 10 o'clock in the morning. But this town was that way. It still is. They still wake up at 10. At 6 o'clock and 7 o'clock in the morning, if you have a job, you wake up and you leave the town and you go to the job. The rest of the town stays asleep until 10 o'clock in the morning. By 11 o'clock in the morning, people are awake and they're out in the streets or they're driving around. But the flip side was, at 2 o'clock in the morning, they went to sleep. Up until 2 o'clock, the town was wide open, and everybody would walk around the town visiting each other. You know, all kinds of people walking up and down the streets, laughing, singing, riding bicycles, tricycles. Little motor scooters were popular. Motor scooters with red flags on them. And everybody had a great time up until 2 o'clock in the morning, and then everybody sort of went home and went to sleep. And at 6 and 7 o'clock in the morning, the people who had to go away to work got up and quietly left. Everyone else stayed asleep until 10 o'clock in the morning. Well, that part is still happening. But for some political reason, and I mean political reason, because there's a lot of petty, sick politicians in this town and in this county, which is the flaw. The flaw that is now becoming a volcano of greed. Embarrassing, disgusting greed. Almost to the point of being loathsome. It's getting to the point of being loathsome. Sickening. For political reasons, a curfew was created. A 10 o'clock at night curfew, which destroyed a very wholesome and important part of the culture of the town. Because now everybody went home by 10 o'clock at night. And it was like a death shot in the arm of Eagle Grove. It took away a lot of vitality of the town. The town became dull. When something like that's part of your routine, part of the social environment and the vitality of a town is taken away, the town becomes reduced, mollified. And that was the intention. Because the local greedy politicians couldn't control the populations. Everything was too free here, too non-political, too anti-greed, too opposite of what greedy little bastards and bitches could benefit from, being a controlled population, mollified, subdued population. So this curfew was made. And now everyone is at home by 10 o'clock at night. And it's like missing half a lung. Or part of your heart was cut out. This town has become bland, dull. In comparison to what it was, part of its life has been cut out. Now that, as bad as it is ideal for petty politicians. petty, greedy bastards and bitches love that kind of thing. Get a population used to being subdued and controlled and collared and unable to express themselves as they used to. And then years later, you can slam them with all kinds of restrictions and counter life. Things that are counter to their life. And they'll be forced to accept it because they're now a depressed population. It's all part of a plan. It's all evil. Sick. And now, the hoggers. Now, change of politics. This was previously a Republican county. Not once the slaughterhouse is in and the 1,000 expected new inhabitants are here, all of which will be Democrats. Why would big business assholes want repo craps here? And why would county coyotes care? Why would a county coyote care what the political alignment of a county is? A county coyote is only rape-oriented. Squeeze the most, rape the most out of the county population that you can for your salary and that all-important swimming pool in your backyard that has no turds in it, which is supposed to indicate that you're not a piece of shit, like you look and like you sound and like you act. You're not a piece of shit like you look and you sound and you act because in your backyard is a swimming pool with no turds in it. See? Duh. That's a level of evil thinking that's going on here. And it's getting worse. The greed is vomiting to the surface. And this is happening. This has got to be reported. This has got to be logged. And I'm not the only one. Quite a few people know that every printed word in that local news rag is total political propaganda shit. I'm not the only one recording it. I'm not the only one watching it. So all of this is going on. And you would think, well, get into that, and that will provide you with the relief from your other message that you need in order to perceive, to maintain, to perpetuate that emphasis and that direction of this other message. You escape it to go back to it, but you keep your perception about it, you keep your purpose, and you keep moving in the right direction. But instead of having to read books for that escapism, why not report about all of this monkey shit that's going on at the county and city level? Well, it does not work that way. Does not work that way. As a matter of fact, other people are doing it. And all it does is piss me off. Gets in my way, and I do not like that. I do not need to see all of this queer shit and bullshit going on. It does not make me happy. It makes me unhappy. Unhappy. A bunch of big business white assholes just said, "Fuck you, Peters." Okay, I trimmed the beard. I also wanted to talk about writing and how there's no real one solution for every writer's problems. But writers have got to understand that, especially beginning writers, have to understand that writing a large work, whatever seems to be large to that person, is kind of like a long-distance horse race. At the beginning of a long-distance horse race, everybody's fired up to take off. Everyone's lined up at the starting line. All the horses are ready. All the riders are ready. All the fanfare and all the fol-de-rah has already happened. And the starting gun is fired, bang, and everybody leaps off of the starting line as fast as they can with as much frivolic fol-de-rah as they can muster, and fanfare and waving to the crowds, and off they go in a big mass as fast as they can, which lasts until they get out of sight. Because there's no way that kind of false bravado and that synthetic impetus can be maintained for 100 miles or 200 miles. No way. By the end of the long-distance horse race, 40% won't even be in the race anymore, and the other 60% will be in some various condition of falling apart or half dead or, about to perish somehow. And the lucky ones that are also the most determined ones will make it across the finish line, not necessarily as the winners. But as soon as they got out of sight of the starting line, they all slowed down. They all slow down to a pace that they set that has to see them through 100 miles or 200 miles of a grueling course. Those horse races, those across-the-country horse races, are never easy. And there's no way you can keep up this starting line fever all the way to the end. It's not going to happen. Those that try grind to a halt before they get a quarter of the way through the race. In the case of a person who is starting to write, it's actually imperative and mandatory that you have this starting line fervor, which will feel like a fever. Other people will not understand you. People will think there's something wrong with you. But you have to have that, because you've got to get your ass off the starting blocks. You've got to get yourself moving, writing, thinking, writing, thinking, writing, thinking, writing, thinking, writing. You've got to get into that routine. You've got to start off with a bang. But if you're a beginning writer and you've never done it before, and you slow down naturally because of natural causes, natural impedance, which will hit you, it'll hit you hard, you may think you're starting to fail. You may think, oh, woe is me, because I don't have the fever anymore, I'm not going to get this done. I'm not going to succeed. I won't make the distance. I've got to have this fever all the way through. Oh, I've got to have this fervor. I've got to have this gung-ho attitude. I've got to have this reckless attitude all the way through. Or I'm just not going to make it. I'm weakening. I'm slowing down. Well, you're supposed to weaken. You're supposed to slow down. That fervor, that fever was only for the starting line, out to the horizon. After which, the show is over, And you've got to get the work done, which means you have to slow down to a pace. You have to slow down to a regulated, regimented routine to get through the entire work. And once you set that out, once you achieve that, once you make that happen, you're going to find times when you start to bog down. Sometimes you're not even aware of why you're bogging down, why you're slowing down. But you've got a lot done, but there's a lot more to be done. You've got a lot written, planned and organized, and you've even plotted out and outlined what has to be done through the rest of the message, the rest of the book. But you're slowing down, you're bogging down. Why is this happening? Well, it's nature's way of telling you that your brain has been working on that one thing for too long. Too long you've been involved in that one pathway. And logging down and registering all kinds of other things that come in to that pathway and want to be noticed by you and want your attention, and you have to write them down and log them and put them in their proper places for later. Things become too complicated, you begin to slow down to what is called the slog. And the only time you want to bust your way through the slog is at the very end. The slog, the bog, whatever you want to call it, is nature's way of telling you whatever you're into right now, whatever chapter it is, finish it. Finish that with the thought in your mind, after this, I'm going to stop. Finish what you're doing, don't lose it, finish it, but then stop. Read a book. Take photographs of your state. Sometimes all you have to do is take a shower or go to the sauna or run on the treadmill. I find going to sleep works very well. Really, really, really well. And when I get into this, I'm giving you an internal secret here. When I get into a message so much that I start to bog down, which will happen, which is telling you that your brain has been on this one thing too much. You're going to lose the sharpness. You're going to lose the perspective. You better stop so you can stay fresh and stay on top of this for the rest of the journey, the writing journey. And you finish this one thing that you're on. What I find is if you go to sleep, while you're trying to go to sleep, all kinds of tensions and anxieties and thoughts, counter thoughts, all kinds of things will work themselves out in your brain while you're trying to go to sleep. You won't just fall asleep. You'll lie there in bed and look at the ceiling and close your eyes, and all of these things will happen. All kinds of, you will wish that you were watching moire patterns. Better to watch moire patterns than to watch all of this, but it will all happen. Faces, voices, scenes, articles, situations, good ideas, bad ideas, fighting each other, all kinds of things will happen. Like a great winding down. Difficult to live through. But you're lying on your back with your eyes closed, and you've got to let it happen. And in its own way, it will turn itself off. It will wind itself down, and 10 hours later you will wake up. Quite refreshed. Quite refreshed. However, the key point is, if you are not overextending yourself, if you are not going beyond a certain pace or beyond a certain power level that you should have maintained, if it was not becoming too much, too soon, happening too fast, you're losing perspective, you're losing objectivity, you're losing the point of it all, you would have just fallen to sleep. Like a log, gone. You would have gone to your bed, gotten under the blankets, turned on the heating pads, looked up at the ceiling, and zonked out. 10 hours later, you wake up. Hey! I feel great! If you were not overextending yourself, and you were not bogging down, you were not getting into a danger zone, you were not seeing that the meter is over there in the red, then you would not experience all of this unwinding sensation and all of these visions that you see when you try to go to sleep. It's a sure sign. It's a sure sign that you're doing things right, but you're doing too much of it. You're doing things right, but you're getting exhausted. You're doing things right, but something's getting lost. Something is telling you slow down and stop. You're losing some perspective. You're losing some thread through the whole narrative. You're losing something. Something is not right. And your brain is actually slowing you down. Your brain is actually telling you, stop. Finish what you're doing right now. Save it all. Shut it all down. Shut the whole computer down. And go to sleep. That's what I do. And then you get these visions, these many different dioramas and scenarios swimming in front of you while your eyes are closed and you're trying to go to sleep. That means you've been juggling too many things at the same time. Your memory banks are filled with things that are not necessary at all, which happens. Absolutely happens. While you're writing, all kinds of things become accumulated that are completely worthless. You've got to sleep and erase them. Sleep erases all of that crap. But my point is, you know you're doing it right when you get this kind of phenomenon happening to you while you're writing the message, and then you go to sleep, but instead of falling to sleep, you see all of this three-dimensional chaos. Unwinding, tension unwinding, people shouting at you, people crying, people laughing, people lying, all kinds of things that are unnecessary, and you just ignore them and you tell them all to go to hell, which is that way about 2,000 miles. And finally, it wears itself out and you fall asleep, and 10 hours later you wake up and you feel great. Key point is, if you fall asleep and all of that does not happen, you just fell asleep. You're not at one of those points. You're not at a slow down point in the entire timeline. You're just getting tired for some reason. It's not the writing that's slowing you down. It's not the thinking. It's just some other reason. Some other cause. Because when the writing and the thinking stops you, when the writing and the creativity, and it's a huge creative process, when the creativity and the writing and the thinking that goes with it slows you down, and you decide, okay, that's it for now, and you go to sleep, you will experience this great unwinding phenomenon while you're trying to go to sleep. Then and only then do you know it's the thinking, it's the creativity, it's the writing that stopped you. Which, like I said, is a good thing. Because it's a sure sign. It's a sure sign that you're doing things right. And you should have stopped. Now's the time to stop, because when that stuff unwinds in your brain, it goes away forever. You wake up with a fresh slate. You wake up with a fresh memory system. And your determination kicks back in and off you go again. But you may not want to do that right away. It's your prerogative. If you've got the determination, you've got the willpower to just keep going and keep going and keep going, then you do not have to wake up after 10 hours of sleep and go right back to it. No way. Do something else. Like I say in this audio that I'm including with this, if you do something that's not related to your message, your book, you're not shirking the book. You're not turning your back on the book. You're not abandoning the effort. You're doing something else to take your brain off of what you were doing. It's a kind of refreshment. There's that old saying that one of the best ways to relieve one kind of stress is to take on another kind of stress, which works, but it's not necessarily the best way of doing it. I just get interested in something else, or I just go do something else that's totally unrelated. And I come back in a few days and start pounding away at the message again. Boom, boom, ba boom, boom, ba boom. And when you come back, man, you take off like a rocket. Oh yeah, it's like second stage separation. You just take off like a new stage, man. Off you go. Boom. And you write things you would not have written 5 days ago while you were getting tired. You do things in your message that are way surprising even to you, which while you were winding down and getting tired 5 days ago, you never would have dreamed of doing. So it can be really beneficial to just go away from a big project, a big work, for 5 days and do something else. And come back and surprise even you with what you write and what you create. I hope somebody heard that.